the Obama nuclear deal allowed enrichment.
Chris Jensen, why would you be stupid enough to vote in favor of slavery? Well, most Americans are perfectly okay with slavery. What do you mean? It's Juneteenth, man. Charlie Kirk said that it's not a real holiday, and he made content saying that he's not going to take the day off, and he made a point of going to work and making a bunch of content about how he's working because Juneteenth isn't a real holiday. So, you know, a lot of people are for slavery in America. In fact, even in California, liberal California, they put slavery on the ballot that said that the 13th Amendment doesn't go far enough and that people who are in prisons shouldn't be used as slaves, which makes sense because why do they lose their rights? Do they lose all of their rights because they're in prison? Should they have to work? I mean, we're incarcerating them. They don't have to do anything. Forcing them to work for corporations as slave labor seems wrong. That you can rent out prisoners, that they rent prisoner. You can rent a prisoner in all 50 states. You can do that. You can rent a prisoner. What they just did, they just had a small marijuana charge or something. Yeah, you can rent those people. They're for sale. But California voted it down. We voted for slavery to keep it in California. First time anyone tried to challenge the 13th Amendment, and it failed.
Ours will not. The Obama deal allowed the accumulation of stockpiled weapons-grade material. Ours is actually leading to the destruction of that stockpile of enriched material.
Again, you don't have a deal. You don't have anything to compare to the JCPOA. And you're lying about what the
They committed a crime. Great question. They committed a crime. What crime did they commit? Well, any old crime. They forgot to pay their parking tickets? Yeah, they forgot to pay their parking tickets, landed themselves in jail. So now you can rent them out and use them as strawberry pickers or slaughterhouse workers. Makes perfect sense, right? That's slavery. That's just slavery. You don't lose your rights to your own labor because you committed a crime. And especially when the state is the one determining what those crimes are. The state gets to decide. When did you start loving the government so much, Texas Jane? You love the government so much, you trust them to own people? They own you now? They own you, so they can rape you too. Then they can use you as sex workers too, right? They can buy and sell you as sex workers because you committed a crime. Okay, where do you draw the line, Jane? So see, exactly what I was trying to say. See, Jane is pro-slavery. Jane is pro-slavery. See, Texas Jane is for slavery, and you'll see this a lot in America. They'll say they're against slavery, but they're not. They're against one form of slavery that we've been taught to not like. We've been taught that being born a slave because you're of a certain race, which is kind of unique to the United States. We were the ones that really were into that shit, where if you were born a certain race, you were a slave from birth. That is the only type of slave that we have, the only form of slavery that we've completely said, no, we're not doing that. But slavery, there are more people slaved in America today than there were in antebellum South. More people are being bought and traded in America. Sex trafficked, illegal immigrants that are being bought and sold. We have people who are brought over without paperwork. They're brought over and they wake up in this country. Trucks full of people that are then being used as slaves. We have this problem in America. It's perennial, and nobody wants to do anything about it. And we still have, if you get on the wrong side of the state and you end up in prison, they can use you as a slave. Now, that doesn't sound like a country that's for liberty and freedom. No. Oh yeah, it's a little someone who's murdered. It's funny. Usually murderers don't get to be slaves. By the way, they're usually on death row in maximum security prisons. So again, Texas Jane, she's for slavery, but then tries to appropriate the experience of others, family members of murder victims. They can rest assured the slave, the person who is on death row or in maximum security, they can't usually be used. They usually can't be rented out to corporations because they're too much of a risk. So you really can't do that. It's usually the petty criminals, the people who cheated on their taxes or stole from a pharmacy or stuff like that, robbed a liquor store because they couldn't pay rent, stuff like that. Those are the people who end up in used as slaves in America. But of course, appropriate appropriate the experience of murder victims because you were a ghoul. Texas Jane, you were a ghoul. To use the experience of people who actually have murdered family members, of course you would use them. Why wouldn't you use them? You would use them to justify slavery. Of course you would. You want to use the Bible next? Because that is a perennial favorite of the pro-slavery movement in America. Use the Bible to defend slavery. People have been doing it for, I don't know, thousands of years. You could use the Old Testament to defend almost all heinous acts. It's almost like the New Testament never happened. It's always that way. You guys always forget about Jesus, about how the meek shall inherit the earth and how blessed are those who hunger for justice. But no, not Texas Jane. Texas Jane's pro-slavery and anti-Jesus, anti-human, anti-American. You're anti-American. You don't believe in the ideals of America, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.